Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Kashif Booth podcast. If you're new here, each week I sit down with a guest and we discuss their career so far, the highs, the lows, and what's next for them. Today's guest is Michael Jenkins. He is a writer, producer from Bristol. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you so much for having me, Kashif.
Yes.
I love watching the show, so it's great to be on it.
Thank you, thank you. Well, I mean, it's great to have you on the show because, like, I one thing I love about like doing this show is that like I'm able to interview people who I've known of for a while, and we see each other like on social media doing our thing, and then this is like the first time I get to meet them, or I randomly meet them years later, and I never can pinpoint the moment as like when we connected. It just feels like you've known each other for years but you haven't met each other, and I feel like that's with you because I feel like we have been following each other on social media for years, and then we finally met only like a couple years ago. Do you remember at
Yeah.
the film and TV charity event, which was all with like black-led independent production companies, and we were doing that kind of discussion, and it was weird for me, right? Because I remember you came up to me and you were like, "Oh yeah, Kashif," and I'm like, have we met? Like, I don't know. Only because, right, your profile picture is you can't really see your face. So I didn't know. Then I was like, oh my gosh, wow. So so how long like do you feel like we've known each other, or what was it like for you like finally meeting loads of people in that space as well?
Yeah, I mean it was great, and obviously, like as I said, I've seen your work, I've seen what you
Mhm,
do and your platform. I've seen some of your short films. So yeah, I've been following you because I follow a lot of different a lot of up and coming black filmmakers, established black filmmakers, because there's not uh, especially where I am, there's not many of us. Do you know what I mean? So I'm just so coming to London when I met you, and I came with Mina, for my business partner from Black Wave Productions,
mhm,
and like meeting other production companies in that space in London was great. And yeah, and obviously, like, yeah, I saw you and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna shout you out because, like, yeah, loving the content and love what you're
mhm,
doing, and there's not many people doing what you're doing in this space.
mhm,
Like, focusing on these black creatives, black British creatives, and
mhm.
people that are trying to move the needle, like,
Mhm. Well, I thank you, but it's true. Like it's great. I think it's like it's a great way to kind of like network across as well. And I think before COVID, especially, I used to be in everyone's DMs. Like especially if like we'd been following each other for years, I'd be like, let's connect, let's work, let's even if it wasn't about us working on a project, let's just connect as creators within the industry. And that's happened a lot. Like there's been a lot of people who I've connected with, and then years later I've worked with them, and it's always sometimes about timing and stuff like that. So speaking of, you are a Bristol based filmmaker making waves with your production company Black Wave Productions. And I love what people like yourself and like a lot of people up in Birmingham as well, like where you refuse to come to London, you and what I mean by that is that you're like, you know what, nah, you guys come to us and you can see that like there's more to the creative industry than just London, and more stories like across England, because the diaspora within like Black Britain is so bold, and there is a tendency to definitely focus heavily on the Black London experience, and it would be great if there's so much more. We've had intricates of it, like, but not a lot. So tell me about you. Like, why did you get into this industry, and yeah, what's your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, it was like I've, like a lot of people, I saw a lot of negative representation of black people growing up. Every time I'd see something on TV, we didn't really see ourselves much on TV, so it was a big moment when we actually did. But again, I sort of grew up thinking, I sort of had a disdain for like that sort of stuff. But
Mm,
then I just decided one day, do you know what? I'm just going to be the change that I want to see, and just like actively try and do something about it. And yeah, I know all these different people. Bristol, where I'm from, there's such a rich history, of like, activism, and of, the African Caribbean culture in Bristol is like, it is strong, and like there's a big influence here. And yeah, I just saw so many characters. I thought, yeah, I wanted to tell their stories. I want to hear other stories. I want to hear more nuanced stories. I mean, constantly hearing about, crime. Now, obviously, crime is a
mhm,
genre that I love as a filmmaker. I love
mhm,
crime thrillers. Um, but that was all I was seeing. I was like, nah, there's other stories here. So that's the sort of
Mhm.
that's sort of why I wanted to get into this, and that
Mhm.
was the reason.
So why did you not come to London? Have you ever come to London and just tried to make it, or what was it? You really wanted to just like put Bristol on the map.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really look on the I'm an outsider to the industry. I didn't go to like film school or anything like that. I didn't go to college to do media. I sort of, picked up a camera. I was shooting music videos,
Mhm.
and I sort of moved from music videos to doing a bit of I was when I was doing like volunteering at a community radio station here in
Mhm.
Bristol, BCFM. When I was there, that's when I sort of learned about how to do like documentaries and
Okay.
radio documentaries, and I
Hmm.
thought, well, this needs visuals. So like,
Right.
that's sort of was my, and then I just wanted to tell stories about that I saw around me and these people in my community and what people were doing. I wanted to really showcase that,
Hmm.
and I never really saw myself as trying to get into the industry or trying to get to London or move into London. Plus, I've got like I think when I first started, I had a young family. I wasn't
Hmm.
about to move my family out to the
Yeah,
end.
yeah, yeah.
Wasn't happening like that. So
Hmm.
there
Hmm.
was reasons why I didn't necessarily think, yeah, I'm going to go to London and try and do it there. I was just like, do you know what? I'm going to tell the stories that I hear and just make things pop off here. There wasn't really many people doing things like doing stuff. So I was like, yeah, I want to instead of just doing music videos, you know what? I'm gonna do like documentaries, and then that led to short sort of art films, art type films, and then that led to me doing what I'm sort of doing now a lot of, which is drama. So
Hmm.
yeah, so that's the sort of the journey, and luckily I've been able to sort of have a bit of a career, you know, being in Bristol, which is great because obviously Bristol is the hub around the world for it's known around the world for natural history, documentary and productions.
Hmm.
Um, so, but that wasn't necessarily a path I wanted to go down. I wanted to tell the stories about my community because that's why I felt like there was a gap, and
Hmm.
that's what I felt like wasn't being told. So yeah, I just felt like doing that. But I mean, more recently, I've been coming to London a lot more and networking and meeting more people and looking for opportunities here to collaborate and yeah, because I mean, but still in my heart, like there's so many stories that need to be told here. I mean, as long as I can keep doing this for as long as I can, then that's what I want to be doing.
Hmm. And I see that a lot in your work as well, especially with films like Picnic, and especially when you talk a lot about the just identity as well and culture, and Black British culture is so varied as well. And I loved the piece you did with like Random Acts as well, which really touched on colorism as well, and it was very powerful, especially as it's like just pure narration and then it's a silent film. And colorism is such a touchy subject, but the way your content translates to the audiences, they get it, especially like with the project you did where it was just in terms of the statue in Bristol, which was famously thrown into the river. I see it, and Bristol is one of those like major cities where it's like in the UK where people go to, if you're not in London, you'll find out people are from Bristol and they love Bristol. So I think it's great. So what is it so much about like identity and your culture that you like to push through in your work? And you've been able to obviously get it on great platforms like Channel 4, etc., and work with so many different brands. So what is besides it just putting telling Bristol stories, like what is it about just telling stories from the Black British experience in that way?
I mean, it's just something that I feel like just needs to be told.
Uh-huh.
Um, it's something that I'm just passionate about. Um, Documenting and showcasing to the world, like I mean, as far as like I mean, I love history. That's a real sort of passion for me. I love sort of studying history and I love mythology and things like that. And growing up not really seeing yourself in the history books, not really seeing yourself on TV, not really having an understanding, not being taught by the mainstream your history, having to dig it out yourself,
Mhm.
find clues in music, and then go to the library and research and things like that. I mean, that sort of a journey give me a sort of the reason why I felt like, yeah, there's so many things I want to just put out there and use the visual medium, to do it, like, um, and I think, issues around, identity, issues around sort of, issues that we all face, you know, around grief, around death, around fear, you know, around things that affect us, institutional racism, white supremacy, these sorts of concepts and ideologies that can affect us on varying different levels, like, and just there's so much nuance within our communities. Is just like I want to explore that and also hold a bit of a mirror up to ourselves as well. And more recently, I found drama being a really nice medium to do that. But also, I've done sort of art films that have explored some of these topics as well. So I did make a documentary for Channel 4 about the Colston statue being toppled because I was the one on the ground with the activists and for years and years, and then I was there when it actually happened on that day on that march. But then I also told it in a different perspective with more of a poetry narrative and we used a guy who was a great ade. He was a great dancer, and we got him involved, and to invoke something that we wanted to create with a more sort of a poetry sort of film around this topic. So there's different ways, there's loads of different mediums to explore different topics, and I like to explore with different mediums, which is good sometimes and bad. It just depends. When you're trying to tell people about what you're doing, they're like, well, yeah, I can do this and this, but I suppose we're having a conversation about this, so you know.
hmm No, I totally understand that. I'm very passionate about Black British culture and what we tell because I think a lot of the time, like, our culture can be drowned out by, African American culture. And so people view that as like all Black people. And sometimes I think, like you said, we didn't really grow up seeing ourselves represented. Yeah, there were Black people on TV, but they were American. Where did we see like Black British, and I've been using my platforms, especially like on YouTube and TikTok, and like I've been educating like audiences on like Black British film and TV and what we've actually had. Because, like you said, like, there's lots of stuff about crime and stuff, but people always are regurgitating that same narrative that that's all we've ever had. I'm like, whoa, wait, guys, we've had all of this, but they haven't lasted or nobody remembers it. And so it's like, here you guys are, and try to make them understand that like the way the industry works is that we don't really have like that form of like black market, like in the UK. So it's like until we show the power of it, then that's when you'll get more of it. So, until audiences can really understand like black culture without it just educating or being around race,
Mm, mm,
then things will change. And so I think by you doing what you're doing and me doing what I'm doing, it's like trying to change the narrative, but also educate. So it's a kind of like, it's a catch-22 because you, at the same time, you don't always want your work just to be, okay, this is very much black and black, but you just want to see them like as people, and so it's a weird one.
exactly, Shiva, because Shiva, it's all about just telling our stories,
Yeah.
because we don't wake up thinking, yeah, okay, we're black today. It doesn't
No.
work like that. We just want to
No.
express our sort of our nuances, and get
Yeah.
people to have a further understanding of this, and that's what media is for. Like, that is what essentially it's created as a propaganda tool, so
hmm
it's like that is what it is. And like, we for the longest time, we really haven't been able to um control the means of production of our own propaganda. And I feel like in the past 10, 15 years, that's changed because of DSLRs and cameras getting cheaper, and
hmm
being able to edit stuff and produce your own things, and
Yeah.
the beginning of the content creator and all that sort of stuff. So it just means that we can now really be able to showcase the nuance. And but there's a lot of things in history that the younger generation, our generation, don't know about, and like and things that will be forgotten because our elders, our elders didn't have that means of production like the way that we do.
Yeah.
So we've got to be conscious of that, and use that. And yeah, you're right, as far as like um the Black American experience, that is like that is obviously saturated everything because
Yeah.
it's so powerful and very influential, like
hmm
but I mean, coming from a Caribbean household, I've grown up really understanding, like my Caribbean culture, my Dominican and my Jamaican culture.
hmm
And how massively influential that has become, and how I've seen that transpire in the sort of modern lexicon. And then when I learned about it, it was the same thing happening in the 70s when my grandparents came here and they brought their music here, and influenced the culture with ska and all that, and created that UK sound, which was very much a Caribbean heavily influenced sound. And yeah, there's so many stories about our influence here, and the struggles and the fights of our elders in order for everybody to be able to come here and settle here. And there was a lot of suffering that had to happen, like and but some people don't understand. I mean, in more recent years, because of the Windrush scandal, more people are talking about that sort of period of history, but before all that was like something that everybody was talking about. That was something have been passionate about, telling, whether that's through just telling you factual information through a documentary, or doing something which is a lot more, using sort of magical realism to tell a story, like what I did with Pickney. A lot of
Yeah.
people thought that was going to be one type of a film, one type
Mhm,
of a style, but it's about
mhm,
death, and it's about grieving, and it's about
mhm.
moving, like growing up,
Yeah.
and coming of age. So it's like there's so much nuances. Everybody can relate to us, everybody, no matter what color you are, no matter where you come from, no matter what race, religion, culture, you've experienced somebody that you love that's passed away. And that is something that is a universal truth. And, we've got stories within that are universal truths, but, from slightly different perspectives, which I feel like the world needs now.
It's true. It's true. And fun fact, I don't know if you know this actually. When Pickney won its ABFF award for fan favorite award in 2021, my web series Talia Versus was also selected the same year. So we were there, yeah. So it was like I remember seeing you
Yeah.
promote it as well. And like I don't know, have you ever been to ABFF? Like have you ever been?
Unfortunately not, but it's on the plan. I know they got their 30th coming soon. So, I mean,
Yes, yes.
I mean,
You
it was
definitely should
insane.
go.
Yeah, I definitely want to go because I
Uh-huh.
selected during COVID, and it was
Same.
like the
Uh-huh.
time when the world was locked down, which was
Yeah.
when
Yeah, yeah.
a short film. But I guess this this
Mhm.
is this is the way it works. We have to we
Yeah,
have to do what we got to do and keep it moving.
exactly. Because I went in 2019, so just as like just to go, and it was amazing. So, guys, if you don't know, it's the American Black Film Festival. It's arguably the biggest black film festival in the world, and yeah, it's just go, just go. It's in South Beach in Miami. Great weather, great. Just I always remember like I accidentally just kept on bumping into this woman, like just I don't know why. I'm just always in her way. It was just weird. Come to find out, she was like one of the senior animators in at Disney. You know,
Oh,
like is that's the type of caliber of people you're just with in that vicinity, and it's like just understanding how they've been able to carve out that black market is so like it's so inspiring, and so, but at the same time, they have like 13% of black people there, and there's only like three of us here. So, it is hard to
it's
compare
that's
apples and oranges.
Yes, yes, that is.
Yeah.
I mean, and that is a big point, because they have, a big
Yeah.
population, and I
Mhm.
and I feel like here we are more disjointed, even though we are connected to
Yeah.
and we're connected to our relative, Africa or the Caribbean or even America. I
Mhm.
think like we haven't got that joint, but we all speak the same language.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Mhm.
I think more sort of thinking, and looking at the way that they do things in America, looking at how they've achieved what they've achieved,
Yeah.
and their history is really, inspiring, and it
Yeah.
should inspire us,
Mhm.
because they literally created independent film because they had to. They were, during the Jim Crow, and you know, they,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
segregation stopped them from getting into Hollywood. So they literally had to create their own. They
Mhm.
literally had to invent their own independent thing, like,
Exactly.
and it's and again, like, I just want to see that
Mhm.
happen here, and I've seen it happen more, over the last, like, 10 years, which is really, really, like, encouraging and
Mhm.
important, for the next generation to understand that, we can tell our stories, and we should be, like,
It's true. It's true. And so, speaking of like telling your own stories, you touched on it a little bit earlier that you have your production company, Black Wave Production. So, like, what was the process behind like starting that production company with your business partner? Because you guys have been together for years and you produce such a wide range of content and projects. And also, it's like, you go from documentaries to now scripted drama. And it's very rare sometimes, in some cases, for black production companies to do both. I remember the conversation we was in a couple of years ago. It was very heavily like scripted, and there wasn't really a lot of black people within that factual TV space. And I had just done a documentary called Grams with BET UK around that time, and that was a very interesting experience.
Okay.
That's what I'm gonna say. And like, yeah, you really need black people at the top when you're curating something, because the hoops you're jumping over or trying to explain like black culture and what works is a struggle. So what is it, what was it like starting your production company, and why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, I think the impetus for it was twofold really. I think, being in Bristol and Bristol being, we have like over, 90 odd languages spoken here. It's a very diverse place at the same time, very segregated at the same time.
Mhm.
Like literally physically, like there's areas which are more affluent and there's the poor areas and they're harder to get to like transport wise. I mean, it's very sort of physical. Um and I was, sat in rooms. I found myself sitting in rooms with like the indie sector in Bristol, and I was just the only black person there. And I was just like, this is a bit weird because like everyone's talking about how diverse Bristol is, and but there isn't really any diversity amongst the production community. Um, and at that time, I was just freelance, doing my own thing. Self-employed, doing my own thing, like and I thought to myself, well, it's probably time to actually make an actual structure because I wouldn't it was hard to get conversations with commissioners. Again, at that point, they were all in London, like, there was nobody
Mhm.
here. So, but having conversations with like the local like just having conversations with commissioners like, yeah, you need to have an actual
Yeah.
limited company, you need to do
Mhm.
that process. So, and then I two amazing women from Drummer TV connected Mina and I. We worked together before, but they were like, yeah, you two should really come together and make something. And we sat on it for a little bit, broke it down and thought, yeah, it makes sense, let's do it. And at that point I was just about to make Pickney, um and like I didn't there wasn't a production company I wanted to go to with the idea and trust them to sort of with my baby. Essentially, I was like, oh, I'm just going to make a production company and do this and do it
Mhm.
that way, like, and um yeah, which was great. But then COVID happened and the world shut down. So it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
it was a bit of a
Yeah.
crazy time. But
Mhm.
and then a few months later, the whole George Floyd, rest in peace, got got
Yeah.
got got lynched essentially.
Mhm.
Um and then we had the whole Black Square Summer, which was
Yeah.
all about everybody sort of,
Mhm.
yeah, we all understand, we see you, we hear you,
Mhm.
yeah, we want to hear your stories,
Yeah.
so yeah, we were, what's the
Mhm.
saying, booked and busy at them time there, like,
Yeah.
that's the saying, I think.
Short-lived. Short-lived. It had an expiry date, and it's
Yeah.
gone now. Gone for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like there's so many factors which have which has like got us to where we are now, as far as like at one point they just stopped really commissioning, in general, because it was,
Yeah.
there was lots of different, the strikes,
Exactly.
payout strikes, all that sort of stuff. And then, post COVID, post COVID,
Mhm.
it was kind of like, yeah, there's lots of different things that's happened to make it, to
Yeah.
sort of push that agenda, to
Mhm.
the back for
Yeah.
now. But
Yeah.
what,
Exactly.
as far as how we see it, like, and as far as how
Mhm.
it's how we feel like like the production community is feeding that, like,
Mhm.
and feeding,
Mhm.
our voices are not really that valuable,
Yeah.
um, like they were.
hmm But because you mostly focus, like, in documentary and scripted, like, and you've been able to do it independently and work, within TV across a wide range of, like, projects in terms of like with CBBC and like Channel 4 and stuff, and with brands as well. how have you found navigating both spaces? You know, especially post like what you're saying with Black West Scott Swiss. Can't say it. Black Square Summer. There we
Yeah.
go.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I think it has been difficult. Yeah, I definitely say it has been difficult, and
Mhm,
I guess we're sort of rethinking how we're approaching things. I mean, Mina and I, we've got shared passions, and as far as like storytelling, we just look at the story and look at, okay, well, what's the best medium, what's the best way of telling that story, what would be a great way of telling the story, how could we do it, cost effectively, or how can we just make it happen, and
mhm.
and that can sometimes dictate, what we're trying to pitch to commissioners and things like that, whether it is like an arty type of film, a straight doc, or more of a drama. So I
Mhm,
mean, it does sort of vary. Now, a lot of the avenues are not really commissioning. They're not really, and it's just harder to get like to
mhm,
win commissions at the moment. But, so we've been in a sort of period of development. I mean, developing ideas, being ready for when, it's a more friendlier marketplace, if you know what I'm saying. Um, yeah, so that's sort of what we're doing at the
okay,
moment.
okay.
But we've got things, in the pipeline, things that we're hoping that come through. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things where we're
Mhm,
navigating and expanding our networks, and meeting with more, people that understand financing, and
mhm,
so we can make independent content, and like, and again, partner up with
mhm.
production companies, the across the Atlantic. I mean, that
Yeah,
is something
yeah.
that we're really sort of exploring and
Okay.
figuring out how to do. Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, what was it like for you to like pitch, to work on like with Random Acts on Channel 4? Like, what is the pitching process for you to kind of, especially because it's like short films are such a, the way in. So for you to be able to get a short film made like that and to be able to have it on Channel 4, what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, I think so with sort of the random act stuff. So there was with that, we were more so like I was more so producing
Okay.
films on that and doing some editing and things like that with the random acts, and that was when I was a production partner with the sort of lead producers.
Okay.
I was a production partner with them on that, and that was great. That was a great sort of scheme, which was like enabling first time writer directors their chance of making something which is going to get broadcast.
Okay.
These sorts of things are non-existent now. There's no sort of a place where first-time filmmakers can have the opportunity to get, a broadcast credit and make something that's going to be on TV, like,
Okay.
so that's what that was about. And then there was like a pitching process for some of the other stuff we did with like the BBC Arts and the sort of new creative sort of side of it. And that was more so around, that was great because that was really, they really wanted ideas from us, the
Okay.
ideas from our perspective, our story, and it was quite free,
Okay.
which was really, really nice and doesn't really happen often. So that was like a good process, like,
Okay, that's really good because that's the goal really, and I think it's great that you're able to kind of be able to still do your own independent projects, but then also be able to pitch to them. And have you ever found it kind of overwhelming? Have you found like they don't understand like the vision you have, or sometimes a lot of when I'm talking to a lot of my writer friends or producer friends, they'll be pitching their show or their film, and then they'll be like, oh, this is great. I love it. But we've got something similar like that in development. Or I heard ITV are doing something like that. So we have to pass. Like, have you had that type of like experience when pitching? And what do you think about it? Do you think it's detrimental to the industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like the way the game's set up, innit? I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
whole process. I mean, sometimes they sort of, it's a weird old game, like,
Mm-hmm.
and it depends. Like, it's on us to speak the language that they understand. I think that's on us. That's what we're like here to do, and
Yeah.
translate, what the stories we're trying to tell to the person that's going to give us the money or invest in it. So there's that. I think people what I've seen is just, people are really risk averse at the moment, and they're
Mm-hmm.
really looking to do stuff with people that are bigger because they can handle, because I don't know, because there's this, because they're just more trusted.
Hmm.
Um, so smaller indies, I'm seeing smaller indies getting pushed out of a lot of opportunities,
Hmm.
and yeah, which has sort of made me feel like, well, sort of just made me go back to the sort of time when I wasn't in the industry like that, and I was just making stuff and doing my thing and making things happen, and like
Hmm.
that is what we need to do with our stories. We need to make them happen and tell them, and it's 2025. There's ways that we can make money, and there's ways we can do stuff and get it to market, you know. I think it's just I think it's on us to really figure that out, because you know our stories sell and our stories set trends, you know. I mean, you
Hmm.
know, it's a given. Like, you know, look at something like, you know, Supercell, which is, you know, which is great. But even still, look at something like Top Boy. You know, it just, but
Yeah.
it wasn't created by us, and I think that's what a lot of people have got a problem with it. You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
think that's why people have got a problem with that, because it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily us that was creating that. Um, but it sells, you know.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
I do think the industry isn't taking a lot of risks at the moment, and like from a lot of like the conversations that have been having happening in terms of like the where the level of the industry is at in terms of like uh there's no work. And I don't know if you've seen, but like, and maybe a lot of the listeners don't know either, but it's like there was like a real boom post 2021. So it's like 2022, they were splashing cash like it was like money grows on trees, right? So many things were being commissioned, so many jobs, and everybody was like, whoa, wow, this is amazing. And then it's like they did their industry projections and saw what was return on investment, and it's like, oh, we haven't made money. So it's like from the beginning of 2023, it's like they scaled back and they've continuously scaled back, and they've become a lot more, like you said, risk averse, and they're being very, very niche. So they're only really focusing on stuff that's going to be like sold internationally so that they can get a bigger return on investment. And that then in turn leads to less stuff being commissioned, less people working. And so I understand that, but the more you push out just internationally, it just makes our industry just be desolate. And it's like a catch 22 kind of situation, because a lot of executives are saying, well, you know, we're losing to streaming, so we need to be focusing on streaming. Yeah, but people are going to streaming because they're finding the content that they want to watch. If you made it in the UK on UK channels and promoted it properly, then maybe you get the same level of return on investment, but they're not doing that. And so, yes, I agree, it's about pitching what you think they want to have, but again, they're very much like risk averse. So they're only going to go with what they know is going to be a success. Because I did remember reading on theguardian.com a few months ago that, you know, what's it, Mr. Bates versus the Post Office? That was a
yeah.
huge hit, but apparently they lost about 1 million
Mm.
from that. I don't know how, but that's what apparently one of the ITV bosses said. So, you know, so.
Which is really like, because for the UK, that's an important story.
Hmm.
And for it to make £1 million loss
Yeah.
is really like telling you like where people's mindsets
Yeah.
are, like, you know. And yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be a loss of
Hmm.
them for making that story, telling that
Yeah.
story, and that's the sorts of stories that we need to be told, like, you know.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
but yeah, as you said, they IP things that are like, you know, returnable, things that they can make a profit
Yeah.
from, you
Hmm.
know. And that is like yeah, which is really sad. It's really
Hmm.
sad to see. And you know, I watched a documentary years ago called "Who Killed British Cinema." That was, I watched that just as I was sort of getting
Hmm.
into like figuring out like what is the film industry, like, you know, what is the
Hmm.
BFI and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And that was really fascinating, like looking at,
Hmm.
you know, how the funding for sort of local like more like regional things and local things
Yeah.
sort of dissipated and just went away, and
Hmm.
changed and morphed. And I don't know how are the UK channels going to beat the streamers, you know, because it's just pure, it's money. They've just got more money and they're pumping more money into it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we service Hollywood, and we have been servicing Hollywood for a
Yeah.
long, long time.
We have.
And how do we get out of that sort of service in Hollywood mentality to
Mm.
like, yes, we should service Hollywood, but also don't forget that, the stories that are here are really important, for community cohesion, for
Yeah,
everybody to have better understanding of everybody. Like, I think that is,
100%.
yeah, that is what is needed. That's what's missing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But if any commissioners are listening, you know,
We're
yeah.
here with the story.
So I'm just saying, guys, like, yeah. So, but that's why I've kind of tried to switch gears a lot, like, in terms of like trying to understand like different markets and doing co-productions internationally. I've kind of just been like plotting that seed and trying to understand different film markets across the world. I'm now part of a film collective which is half in the UK and half in America. So I'm like, yeah, like slowly building that because yes, I want to tell Black British stories, but I need to be able to like find out other markets what they're doing and kind of get onto their wavelength. Because if we're sitting here waiting for like the UK industry to like change, you're just gonna go grey, you know?
Well,
So,
exactly, exactly.
so
And thinking about, the sort of universality of the stories, that I want to tell, maybe they
yeah,
could be coming from a Black British perspective, but
yeah,
they're all universal, like, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
and I'm thinking, I love the horror genre. I love genre.
Mhm.
Horror is something that I'm really passionate about.
Yeah,
So that's something and that's something that's very commercial and can be done cheaply. And
exactly.
luckily, I like it. So it's not something
Hmm.
that I'm doing because I feel like I have to do it. It's something that I'd want to do anyway. So,
Yeah,
it's just thinking differently about, how our stories can travel and transcend,
yeah.
you know, just these borders. And they definitely can, because when I made Picnic, it was really well received in Canada, in the Caribbean, and in America, like, which
Hmm.
is which then at that point told me about where is this where my audience is? Is this
Yeah,
where my actual audience
yeah.
is? Is it in America? Is it Canada,
Hmm.
where it does it need to blow there before
Yeah.
the audience here pays attention to it? I don't know. So, it's something to explore, and it's something that I want to explore further. So yeah,
100%.
collaborating, co-productions,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
connecting with our brothers and sisters across the Atlantic is
Exactly.
definitely important.
So how have you found like development? Because I know you did that 2 year deal with, Five Acts and like ITV, and that was like it was announced what in 2022, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
that finished just
Uh,
before the beginning of this year. Yeah, that
oh,
finished.
okay. So that's a long time. So like, how did you find that process of developing ideas, especially with like such a well-known, one of the leading networks in the UK? What was that process like? And what have you kind of taken from that as well?
Yeah, I mean, that was the first time I was writing, like focused on writing longer form
Okay.
um content basically. And that for me was like a massive learning curve. Like I'd done lots of shorts,
Hmm.
I'd had ideas to do features and stuff like that, feature films. I had something in early development with the BFI at that point. So I was looking at doing longer form stuff, but I'd never
Hmm.
actually written, that sort of, a pilot for a TV show. So
Hmm.
that, learning from David and Ali, that work at Five Acts, and David obviously runs Five Acts, learning from him about story, and Five Acts as well, like, where it's different to the actual structure of TV is different. And that was amazing, like, and I've I'm really proud of the two sort of scripts the
Hmm.
two pilots that I've created. And yeah, they are being shopped, they're being shopped around. And so it's great, but it might take a year or two before somebody's like, oh, that we want to do that, we want to develop. So it's one of those things. So it's
Hmm.
taught me more. It gave me the chance to um sort of slow down with production, slow down with making things,
Hmm.
concentrate on developing actual ideas
Yeah.
um in that longer form space.
Hmm.
So out of it, I mean, I've written these pilots, but more importantly, I've been able to develop, a whole slate of ideas in different sort of genres, comic graphic novels,
Hmm.
games,
Hmm.
because transmedia, because we consume things, we consume different types of media. And I love games. I've always wanted to do something in games, and I've been able to just explore it. Because before, when you're busy, busy, busy doing this, running around like a headless chicken, that is like you don't have the time to just sit back, breathe, and like, okay, what is around, what's going on, while I had that deal, AI was like just coming onto the scene.
Yeah.
Right, what
Mm.
is this? Is this the future?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was really an important sort of development
Mm.
for me,
Mhm.
as far as a creative. That's definitely
Yeah.
took me to a different level as far as what I was at doing shorts. It changed my perspective on,
Mhm.
what I want to do next, for the next 20, 30 years. It just changed switched it a bit for me, which
Mhm.
was great. It was just what I needed.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So I want to switch gears a bit. So can you name, okay, five like projects, whether it's like films, TV shows, documentary, whatever, what define you as a creative, as a filmmaker? Like, what would those be?
What that I've made.
No, not what you've made, or maybe what's like inspired you, or
Oh,
like
what's
really
inspired?
influences you. Yeah.
Oh, damn, that's a big question, Kashif. I mean, it's deep because different things inspire you at different
Hmm.
points in life,
Okay.
So, that's really tricky. I think there's films that have inspired me to like want to make films, and films like um Malcolm X, Do the Right Thing, Shogun Assassin, um, you know, a lot of horror films from the 80s and 90s that I used to love watching, and was just blew my mind basically. Um, yeah, and music has been a really important part of my life as well.
Hmm.
And you know, all different types of music, but specifically music from the Caribbean, and everything sort of derived from that sort of music in the British context,
Yeah. Hmm.
as well as obviously, soul, R&B, and hip hop
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
all that good stuff. But
Hmm.
you know, music has been really inspirational for me. So I don't know. I'd say like yeah, the color of pomegranates. I don't know if you've seen that film. I mean, that is something that inspires me when I feel like I need a bit of inspiration. There's always things I go back to, like I watch a bit of Shogun Assassin, or I love old sort of 70s kung fu films, Bruce Lee films.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so Game of Death is one of my favorite
Hmm.
films. Um, yeah, but I think that's because I was watching it a lot as a kid because
Yeah.
my dad was a martial arts instructor, teacher in Jeet Kune Do. So it was
Okay.
like it
Okay.
was a big part of my life, just
Hmm.
same as the sort of reggae and
Hmm.
the roots and rock steady. It was all like a big
Yeah.
part of my
Hmm.
growing up. So that's really difficult. I mean, if I was to answer that sort of today, as
Yeah.
far as what's influencing me right
Okay.
now,
Hmm.
and the things that I've seen recently, I'd say something like Yellow Jackets was a really great series.
Hmm.
Supercell was like really sort of inspirational. Um, I saw an amazing short like art film called Burnt Milk. That was incredible. Um, what else? Obviously, I mean, just recently watched Sinners, and Sinners was just like,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, as
Yeah.
far
Yeah.
as vampires, I mean, it's all
Yeah.
something that I've
Hmm.
already been, planning and plotting as far
Yeah.
as from,
Hmm.
our perspective, from
Yeah.
a Black
Yeah.
British perspective. So
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah, that is something that has been amazing. That's really
Okay.
been inspiring.
Hmm.
Um, and what else? What else? What else? What else? I'd say, what else have I been studying recently? I mean, I've been really like just learning more about, oh, I mean, what's the other thing? I don't know. I'm kind of stuck on the other thing.
It's okay. We can come back to it.
Yeah, what I did watch actually.
Oh, okay.
I watched Lovers Rock. I watched the
Oh, yes, the Steve
Lovers Rock,
McQueen.
Steve McQueen
Hmm. Hmm.
thing, and I watched the Small Axe series, and that was I watched that recently. I did sort of watch it a little bit when it came out, but I was so busy. But I did manage to
Hmm.
watch it recently,
Okay.
and 'cause I remember all the sort of drama from the Lovers Rock um section of it, and
Yeah.
people were not happy, like, and and I watched it, and I can see why, but also from a filmmaker's perspective, there's
Mhm.
other things I can see, and that's the beauty of being a filmmaker and seeing the behind the scenes, because you can watch something as a viewer, as an audience member, but you
Mhm.
can also watch it as a creative and be
Yeah.
and appreciate it from that
Yeah.
perspective as well.
Yeah.
So
100%.
yeah, I'd say that's sort of
Okay.
list for now, I'd say.
Okay, okay. So then I'm gonna ask you the follow up, which is similar. So like in terms of your own projects, like for people who are listening and don't know your work, what projects would you recommend them to watch? What would like define you as a filmmaker? We've touched on, the main themes of what you want to tell and what you like to tell, but what would you say your projects would you say define you?
I say definitely, Pickney is the film that I'd say does define sort of where I want to go with my directional storytelling, fusing sort of mythology with, magical realism with sort of
Yeah.
a grounded real story, character driven story. So, I'd say Pickney is definitely, the piece that I would shout about. We Are Not the Virus was the thing that I did for BBC Arts, which is a poetry film, which is me stepping back into my sort of poetry bag, spoken word bag. So that was I'd say that is something that does define me as a as a creative as well. Those two pieces, but there's different things like Golden Goddess is a film I made, which I directed, which was another thing as well, as far as telling that sort of story of the Orishas and all, and that sort of thing, and
Mhm.
yeah, just things that I'm interested in, mythology, you know um yeah, that's what I'm interested in, and our mythology here, and yeah, that's really what fascinates me.
I love that, and it's also like really good to hear that you're into horror because I feel like not a lot of black people are into horror. Like I did you like The Blackening? It came out a few years ago, which was like the comedy horror film. Did you see
um
it?
I don't know if I've seen The Blackening, no.
Yeah, it was like a black comedy horror film like Scream, like where it was like a bunch of black people in a horror film.
Is
You
that
should.
the one that was like, um um wow, what was the tagline for that? Where not all of us can die first, or something like that.
Yeah,
Was that?
yeah, yeah. Some yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, 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 yes.
Hmm.
I remember now. Yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
actually seen that film yet. No.
Oh, you should watch it. You should watch it. It leads into a lot of black people tropes, like like we're gonna die first, you're gonna have to take me out. None of this like, standing around or seeking danger.
Yeah.
Um
Which I
but
think is funny, because I don't think that is a horror thing with black people dying first. I think that was just a general movie thing.
definitely a movie thing. It just became the trope, like, oh well, the black guy or the black girl's gonna die. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
have a friend, an actress friend, her name's Eloise Shakespeare Hart, and she was in this British film called Something in the Water about sharks. A shark killer.
Yeah.
And she was in it, and I went to support her in the in watch it in the cinema, and I was like, yes, okay. And then I saw it coming, and I was like, please. I was counting in my head like, please, please don't be the first one to die, please. And then of course she was the first one to die. I'm like, come on, she's light skinned too. Couldn't you give her a break? Like, damn, like, oh my gosh. But hey,
Yeah.
well, I mean, I love horror as well. Like, I'm very much into like slasher films. I've actually been developing a feature for a few years on like a slasher film. So it's like, it's good to hear like other black people into horror because I feel like we need to do more of that. And I think horror is such a niche genre, but it's also so easy to make. It's very easy to make. It's not very going to be super expensive. And what I love about horror is that the main solid selling point of the film is always just the genre. They can always be like unknown actors, and people will just go and see it. And so,
Yeah.
like, what kind of horror films do you like as well? But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
go ahead.
I think just like with horror, it's like
Mhm.
your blackness doesn't have to be
No.
essential to it. I think everybody loves horror because
Yeah.
fear is like one of the most powerful human emotions, like,
Yeah.
more
Mhm.
powerful than love, like, and I feel like this is the reason why people can relate to it. And the sort of horror films, I mean, I do love a good slasher, but psychological thrillers is what I love. I love sort
Okay.
of ghost and paranormal sort of things.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, vampires,
Mhm.
obviously Blade, when I watched that, when I was too young, obviously, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally
Absolutely
understand.
epic, like, and more recently I actually got to meet the director of Blackula. He came to
Oh,
Bristol,
amazing. Wow.
and just hearing his perspective on horror, and I think I always loved horror, but then when Get Out come out, it became more, people didn't look at me as a weirdo when I was talking about horror and black horror.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
made
Hmm.
it more like people understood, like,
Yeah.
this is a thing. And
Hmm.
just the way that you can, horror is always about the nuance and the layers to it.
Yeah.
It's always been about that. And
Yeah. Hmm.
it is. And I feel like it really lends to the sort of type of stories I want to tell and messages I want to get out there and get across and explore.
Hmm.
Horror is such a good entertaining, because
Yeah.
this is what we've got to remember as well. Like, movies are there for entertainment. Like,
Yeah.
we can't forget that. So, like, people want to be entertained. So we can do that. We can entertain people,
Yeah.
tell a good story, and also put layers and layers of nuance that, you know, everybody will get. And Sinners is just an amazing
Hmm.
example of like
Yeah.
how, how
Hmm.
you can use the horror genre to
Yeah.
tell the stories you want to tell, or give
Hmm.
people that, and start that conversation, because that's what a good movie is
Yeah.
about, starting that conversation.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think with the success of like Get Out and Sinners, don't try to copy and paste those films, because you know, like when they did Get Out, they were doing a bunch of copy and paste stuff and they were all terrible, you know.
Yeah.
And then don't go and make a bunch of movies about black twins who are like vampire slayers or whatever. No, 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 no. What we're saying to you is commission more original stories. Okay, that's
Yeah.
what we want you to do, you know.
Yeah.
So guys, listen to us. Yeah. So Michael, where can people like follow you and like watch all the work that you've mentioned today and keep up to date with everything you've got going on as well?
Yeah, so you can, my one of my websites is obviously blackwaveproductions.com, and that's black without a C. And you can follow me at by Michael Jenkins on, all the sort of socials and stuff like that. And yeah, just hit me up, and you can hear about screenings and things that we've got going on. And as Black Wave, we do, like, do a bit of talent development as well, bring in work with new creatives, new writers and directors. So that's a partnership with the BFI that's going to be all out on social, so people can apply to be a part of that. But yeah, just just hit me up. It's for conversations, connect if you're a creative, and and you want to do some work in Bristol. Yeah, we're here and we're ready. So yeah, follow me on the socials, and buymichaeljenkins.com. You can log on to that as well.
Amazing. Well, Michael, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great to have a conversation with you properly, get to know you, and yeah. So
It's been great, man.
I need to come to Bristol, and I want to be in that space as well. Even like there's a bunch of so many amazing creators in Birmingham. So yeah, I just again, guys,
Come true, Chief, man. You got to come true. I'll
I
show you
do.
around, and, like, link you up
Please,
with people. And yeah, man,
please,
yeah, man. Let's
please,
let's connect, man. It's been
because
great, and I love what you're doing. This platform is really important for other creatives that are just looking and seeing who are the creatives out there, the Black British creatives doing things. I think this your platform is great for that. So keep it up, bro.
Thank you so much. I just think it's just so important to tell like it again, it's like we're all under it's like the black diaspora is everywhere. So there's so many different like experiences of, black people up north and, down south. And like there's so many different like experiences and we need to see more of that. So definitely, I love what you're doing. Keep it up. And what you got sounds amazing. So I just love to see it. And to quote Issa Rae, I'm rooting for everybody black. So we'll end there.
Blessings, Kashif.
Well, thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. You can follow me on my usual socials. You know them. There's a bunch of them. Stay tuned for the episodes coming soon.